grade 8 here to continue. We finished our lecture on the age of imperialism in China, and now we are going to continue to Japan. We are going to continue with how imperialism happened in Japan. Now, I know you have a little bit of a background with this because we discussed this when we discussed World War II, because this had something to do the imperialism of. Can you hear that? Like Chanel whining because I just recently put her in her crate because she was disturbing me. Hold on, okay? You wait. Just for hopefully 30 minutes. Okay? Okay. Now, so we were talking about this. We were talking about this when we were baby girl. So distracting. Okay. So we were talking about this last year, I think, when we were discussing what entered Japan's mind when it started to attack places in Asia. So we're going to start with Japan in the age of imperialism. Just let me pull up the laser pointer first. Baby girl, do not talk to me. I will pause first, okay? Okay. Okay, I think I can continue already, hopefully. She's whining again. Anyway, I'm just gonna have to push through. Okay, now, so we will first discuss the important events in Japan, and also there we will discuss a little bit of Korea here as well. Not at length, but we will mention some of the things that happened in Korea. So for the first few slides, we are just going to have like a little timeline like what we did for China. So first we have a significant event in the imperialism of Japan, which is the arrival of Matthew Perry in Tokyo Bay. You are going to see the significance of this later. We're going to discuss it a little bit more. In 1858, there was the signing of the Treaty of Amity and Commerce. In 1868, the collapse of the Tokugawa shogunate. So the Tokugawa shogunate will be was the last. Okay. Okay, so I think I dealt with that problem. She's now staying in the other room. Hopefully she will not be noisy. I feel bad. I mean, anyway. So we have here the signing of the Treaty of Amity and Commerce, and then we have the collapse of the Tokugawa shogunate. The Tokugawa shogunate is the last. This is no, not the last, but this is the shogunate when the imperialists came. Okay, so if it was the Qing dynasty in China, it would be the Tokugawa shogunate in Japan. Okay. Okay, so we have here the beginning of the Meiji's reign. So the Meiji, the one that succeeded the Tokugawa shogunate would be the Meiji. Okay, the Meiji reign. Independence of Korea from China, but sadly this is not as happy as you would think it would be, because when Korea became independent from China, it fell under Japan. And then we have the outbreak of the Russo-Japanese War, which is the war between Russia and Japan. And then the last in this timeline is in 1910, Japan's occupation of Korea. So, I mean, Korea was very happy to be free from China, I guess, but then it got occupied by Japan. So let's start with the Tokugawa shogunate. Under the Tokugawa shogunate of Japan, again, just like the Ming dynasty, perhaps they got their idea from the Ming dynasty. This is the closed door policy of this was when Japan closed its doors from all foreigners. So foreigners were not allowed. There was one exception though, which we'll discuss later, which I will mention later. So there was a closed door policy of Japan. under the Tokugawa shogunate. This is called the Sakoku period, okay? Sakoku. So this is called the Sakoku period, and then it started in 1633 under the Tokugawa shogunate. The only people that were allowed to trade, the only foreigners that were allowed to trade with Japan during this time were the Chinese, the Koreans, and the Dutch. They were the only white people allowed to trade with Japan, and they were confined to the port of Nagasaki. As you may already notice, hopefully, that ports are very important. Okay, so to be able to control commerce, they need to be able to control ports. So the only port that was allowed to accept the Dutch was the Nagasaki port. And the Dutch were only allowed to go to the Nagasaki port once a year. This was not an anytime thing. Okay, so only once a year. Good. Now, for a very long time, Japan experienced this. This was the lifestyle of Japan since 1633. But then, when things were going on in China, the opium war, and then the spheres of influence, America kind of came in late in the game. Diba, you notice the open door policy, and America brought it in. They kind of wanted to be players in the game also, but they were kind of striving to have land. So what Japan did is it forced Japan to open its doors. And this is, as mentioned earlier, the arrival of Matthew Perry. Matthew C. Perry, he was an admiral of the army. And then he went to Japan and kind of forced Japan to open its doors. Now, why do you think America had the power to do this? I mean, why do you think? Because America had so much weaponry. Their weaponry was advanced. They were really booming. They were rising in power. So they were like, okay, so we are going to dominate. Now I can't stop thinking about Chanel, so I'm just gonna go get her. Okay, hold on. Okay, so she's just gonna be part of this lecture because I don't know. Okay, so Chanel, say hi. Hi. She needs a haircut. I know that. Okay, now. So Matthew C. Perry was like, please, please open up. I don't care about the traditions of Japan. Just please open up your ports, open up your ports, and that's and you're gonna have to trade with us. Stop just trading with the Dutch. Don't be greedy. And so Japan, because Japan was, of course, if you closed your doors for so long, you don't even know what the word advanced means. Like they did not even know they did not even know what it meant to have advanced weaponry. So they had no choice but to open their doors and to sign a treaty with America, which is the Treaty of Kanagawa, or the Treaty of Peace and Amity. Okay, so look at that. Look at the picture. So I really like kind of the contrast between traditional Japanese who are still around, and also the newer American soldiers. Okay, so we have here the Treaty of Kanagawa, or Treaty of Peace and Amity. Now, this is the first ever in the history of Japan, the first peace treaty between Japan and a Westerner. Okay, and eventually, because of the Treaty of Kanagawa, the Treaty of Kanagawa, sweetheart, what did you press with your nose? Okay, there. Here we are. We're back. Okay. Because of the Treaty of Kanagawa, ports, instead of that one port at Nagasaki, more ports were open. And more ports were opened not only to the United States, but also, let me see my list here, the Netherlands, Great Britain, France, and Russia. So, man, it was like, grabe gyud. Uy, grabe gyud. I mean, imperialism was really something. No nga, it's kind of like they're shoving their faces in our faces. Okay, so the Treaty of Kanagawa was accomplished, and the last emperor of the Tokugawa shogunate was that guy, Tokugawa Yoshinobu. Okay, Tokugawa Yoshinobu was the last was the last emperor of the Tokugawa shogunate. He would soon be replaced, okay, by a more kind of an emperor that was more open to the possibility of modernization because he was such a staunch kind of old-fashioned traditional Japanese guy. Okay, now Tokugawa Yoshinobu. Now, so here, as you can see, this is another picture of the arrival of America. And then we're traditional Japan. Now we have American soldiers also there. Okay, now the one that replaced the Tokugawa shogunate was the Meiji. Okay, it's the Meiji period. Now I know probably your association with the word Meiji, among other things, is the chocolate, which is I think a very delicious chocolate baya. And then, but Meiji means different in Japan. Meiji, good grief. Okay, Meiji. Gosh, why is she so active today? Hi. Okay. Meiji modernization, well, I kept saying Meiji na. Meiji meant modernization for Japan. Okay. It really meant that. And their new king was Emperor, did I say king? Their new emperor was Emperor Motsuhito or Emperor Meiji. Motsuhito was, I guess, his more formal name. And he was so supportive of America. So he really supported America. And Japan, being the disciplined people that they are, that has always been their reputation, that the Japanese are very industrious, the Japanese the Japanese are very industrious, they're very disciplined, they really modernized fast. So in a matter of a few years, Japan was able to catch up, even with, like, not just catch up, but surpass even China. Because luoy man gud to ang China good, because they had spheres of influence and all of that. So they were kind of luoy. So, but Japan, they were there. I think that was the difference between China and Japan. China was subdued, but Japan was cooperating. So Japan modernized very quickly. They were very fast. But one disadvantage though is Japan had to let go of a lot of their traditional, what do you call this, ways of life. And one of the saddest for me was that all the samurais were disbanded. Before, a samurai served as the protectors of the emperor, but the emperor said, I don't need you anymore. America is my protector now. And if you do not surrender your katanas, you will be considered rebels. Oh my, that must have really broke. I mean, even talking about it now, I'm not Japanese. Like, I really don't know their culture that much, but man, that must have broken the hearts of many of the samurai. And so a lot of them reluctantly gave up. A lot of them harbored revenge against America in particular. And this is actually why World War II was funded mostly by samurai corporations. Like, I know you know this. What was one of the richest samurai corporations that funded World War II, particularly the attack on Pearl Harbor? Can you comment that for me, please? Can you comment that for me? Maybe you know. I'm sure you know. I'm sure, Bum. I'm not sure if you know. Anyway, so that was one of the hardest things. Now, here are some of the changes that happened in Japan. Okay, the daimyo's lands were confiscated. Instead, they were appointed as governors who were tasked to oversee the land they once owned. So before, the daimyos were the owners of the land, and then now they were reduced to governors. So I don't think the daimyos really like this very much. Okay, I'm gonna put you down. Okay. Now, so the daimyo, it's kind of like in the Philippines, katong lost when the datus lost their lands. I think she wants to pee. When the datus lost their lands, that's kind of how it felt like, that you used to rule the land and now it was taken away and you became a governor. We have the Western political system was studied. So, the way of governance was westernized. The Meiji Constitution was drafted in 1889. And of course, Chanel, wait, hold on. I'm so sorry. The Meiji Constitution, the Meiji Constitution was drafted, which, of course, as you may already guess, it benefited the United States primarily. And then it mandated the restoration of the emperor's power and the formation of a diet or legislature with two assemblies. So now the emperor did not have absolute power anymore, though the Americans allowed that the emperor will maintain its reputation as being a descendant of a god. You remember this? But he did not have absolute power anymore. There was already a legislature or a legislative branch. Okay, now changes in society. The privileges of the nobility were revoked. So ang mga bagagnaw nga nobles before, they had no more privileges. Women were given opportunity to study. A shocker to the Japanese because the Japanese subdued their women and now they were given opportunity to study. The foreigners' modern styles were embraced. So modern style of clothing, modern style of dress, modern style of eating, modern style of dancing. Man, traditional practices were preserved. So may na lang, okay? Okay, now we have changes in economy. Japan's industrial system was likened to that of the Westerner. So basically everything that Japan held dear, I guess, before changed. The government provided capital to businesses developments were made in transportation. So the government gave capital, nagpautang ang government. Products for export were improved. Prices of commodities were lowered. Now, changes in military forces. We have compulsory military training. Man, this may have been a bad mistake because soldiers, some of them became the leaders in World War II. So, the men who were trained right now would be the leaders of World War II. So, maybe this was a mistake. Battleships and weapons similar to those of the Westerners were made. Again, a mistake because a lot of the weapons that they used here, they just improved upon, and that is what they used to bomb Pearl Harbor. Excuse me, sorry, that was loud. Changes in education. As mentioned earlier, the women were allowed to learn. And here, more specifically, the hiragana writing system was simplified and made every character equivalent to one syllables. Nice. Okay, sorry about that typo here. So their hiragana writing system was improved and education focused on equipping citizens with the skills that will help improve the economy. So the economy will be improved. So that was it. We will improve the economy. We will improve the economy. So that is what education focused on. So this here is the hiragana, right? So as you can see, it was one syllable per character already. Now, the next event is dependent on your understanding of the Convention of Tianjin. Okay, now the Convention of Tianjin was an agreement between Meiji Japan and China that neither of them will ever send troops to Korea without asking permission, so to speak. You cannot just send troops to Korea to help Korea out or whatever, for whatever reason. You cannot send military troops to Korea for any reason. So that is what they shook their hands on. Okay, so that is the Convention of Tianjin. So again, the Convention of Tianjin was an agreement between Meiji Japan and China that they will not ever send troops to Korea without prior notification. Hala, kay the king of Korea man was like, China, can you help us please? Because there is this Tonghok rebellion going on in our country and we really, really need your help. And China, I don't know why China did this. Maybe there was a hidden motive with the Westerners that was already conquering China. China sent troops to help the Tonghak rebellion. When Meiji Japan heard about it, they were like, oh, you broke our promise. You broke our agreement. That cannot be. Okay, that cannot be. This means war. Grabe, oo, sad kaayo. Japan, I mean, you could have just talked about it. You could have dealt with it in a diplomatic way. But I think Japan was just looking for an opportunity, um, and to, what do you call this, to be able to go to Korea. So when Japan went to Korea, they captured this guy, actually King Jogong. They captured King Jogong, and Japan, after capturing the king, they installed a pro-Japanese government. I mean, what? They installed a pro-Japanese government in Korea. That's a bit too far, isn't it? It's really a bit too far, good. Like, I don't know how it went from this to that. And China was so annoyed. China was like, man, kanig yung Japan. So there was the first Sino-Japanese war. I mean, China, come on, you just lost like two opium wars. So China was like, no, war, Japan, how dare you? Of course, who do you think lost here? China. Of course, China got defeated here. They were weak. They were drug addicts. I really don't know what happened here. Ngano ni sugot ni sila. And what did I tell you about a war? Every time there was a war or a battle, there is always a treaty. And the treaty that came out of the first Sino-Japanese War was the Treaty of Shimonoseki. So the treaty, I really like the contrast here. Look, China still looks very traditional, but look at Japan. Mga laisyo na kaayo. Look at that. Okay, in the Treaty of Shimonoseki, it provided for Korea's independence. Don't be too happy. I told you, nga Korea's independence is kind of like whatever. Now, China had more ports to Japan, and this defeat gave Japan a new reputation. They were like, "Oy, maayos ning Japan." The Westerners was like, maybe let's not conquer Japan. Maybe let's partner Japan, not slave Japan. Like we are kind of abusing China. Let's maybe not abuse Japan. Okay, so it gave Japan a prominent reputation among Westerners, while China continually experienced humiliation. Okay? Now, a new chapter. They were now an Asian country that was kind of seeking to gain equality with the Westerners. So their imperialism was very different from the imperialism of China. Now, there was this dealing with Russia. Remember, Russia took part in the spheres of influence, huh? Now, Russia had a crush on this PA, that's Port Arthur. Russia had a crush on this beautiful gulf there because in Russia, they're way up in the north, mo freeze ang ilang dagan kay mo freeze ang ilang mga waterway. So they were like, man, we need warmer waters. And Port Arthur seems to have very, very nice water. We like it here. So Russia decided to take Port Arthur. Now, who was in control of Korea during this time? It was Japan. And Russia was here in Manchuria. Hagkoy kay Russia man kind of wanted to just take Port Arthur. And Japan was like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you trying to take something that we took? Tanawara good. Why are you trying to steal something that we stole? Korea was just there, like looking Japan, Russia is eating kimchi. Was that racist? I hope not. Anyway, so this resulted in another war, and that is the Russo-Japanese War. Now, the Russo-Japanese War, to the surprise of everyone who was aware of this, resulted in the victory of Japan. Japan won once again, and everybody was like, whoa, an Asian defeating a Westerner? Remember, this time, before, Asians defeated, we were advanced before, but now it is in the kind of the wheel of history. It was our turn to be at the bottom. But so it was very surprising that Japan won against Russia. And they were like, huh? Japan, what na gyud? And this is the one that really sealed the Japanese reputation. They were now regarded as equals because they were able to achieve that much. Now, the war resulted in the Treaty of Portsmouth. Okay, so we have here Tsar Alexander, we have Roosevelt, and we have Meiji. Emperor Meiji. Now, the Portsmouth drama. You're going to research about that, God willing, when you do your worksheet. Okay, now in the Treaty of Portsmouth, Japan took over a lot of the railroads that Russia built in Asia. It took over the mining industry in Manchuria. Now let me take you back to the map. Remember, Russia was in Manchuria. When Russia got defeated over Port Arthur, Japan controlled the mining industry in Manchuria and the complete Japanese occupation of Korea. So Korea was now under Japan totally. Okay? So that is it. That was a shorter lecture, I think, compared to China. Plus, I'm so sorry again with the Chanel distractions. Very bad girl, but so cute. I can't resist her. So thank you so much for listening to me babble once again. And then we will have another worksheet for this. And we will, I think the next, hold on, let me get your book. I think the next topic is, so we have here imperialism, colonialism, and imperialism in Southeast Asia. So this is not Spanish colonization already in our case. It's Southeast Asia. This is already when America took over. Okay, so I'll see you for that. Grade 8. Take care.